Right, Strongman fam, welcome back to MST Systems YouTube channel where we talk all things strongman, strength conditioning, programming, technique breakdowns, all kinds of stuff. So subscribe if it's up your street. Today we're going to be going over Kieliszkowski's dumbbell. It's been very requested. He's obviously very good at dumbbell, and he's got a little bit of a unique technique. Well, maybe not technique, but unique stance, I will say. Just see basically things that he does good, things that he does unique, and things that we can take away to make our dumbbells better. I say our dumbbells, I've already studied this man's dumbbell a lot, so I've already stolen his bits. Remember though, when people do things well, you don't copy their positions. You need to learn to break stuff down and the little tiny subtle things they do, and maybe you just get one little golden nugget that you take that you can apply to your training. Okay, here we go. This is a good video. 142 kilos. Boom, that was a lovely dumbbell. Right, let's take a look at what he does. Clean wise, he obviously likes to load the hip. So boom, brings the dumbbell back, swings the front end of the dumbbell towards the floor. Back end is in the direction of the old gooch. This position here allows him to use a little bit of momentum because as the back of the dumbbell comes round, it's gonna help swing up. This is one of the most consistent and quickest techniques to do. However, for some people, it can expend a lot of energy, especially on a max lift. There are other ways to clean the dumbbell. However, I clean it like this. 90% of people clean it like this. This is the most common and consistent technique you will see. And as long as you're strong enough in your extension, etc., you know, it's always gonna kind of get to your shoulders. However, there are other ways to make it a touch easier to save energy, but he's obviously gone with this tech and it works real well. So press play again. He's going up to the shoulder. This here, this rack position, we can see at this point that if we were to draw a line from his hand or the center of the dumbbell in this case, because the handle's short, if we drew a line down, it's pretty much through his right leg, all the load. If we play on a tiny little bit longer, you'll see this is one of the great things that he does, is he load in rotation. So he rotates slightly, and as he's rotating, he starts kicking his hip out that way towards the dumbbell. So now at this position that he's now acquired, his torso is lent to the side, he's loading this hip, he's got a little bit more load through his left leg now as well. And in this stance that I've got it paused in, his left leg slightly flexed. If we were to draw a line down now from the dumbbell, it would be directly in the middle of his feet. So he's managed to get the load straight bang on the center line of his center of mass. So the dumbbell center of mass in his center line. So when he's in this position now, he's gonna have a very stable rack. And that's one of the key things about the dumbbell that you need to do to have a stable and solid rack. You don't want it to move as you dip. So that rotation that he does and kicking the hip out and loading that opposite leg, perfect. As he dips, the camera kind of cuts so we can't see the front angle, but as he dips, his torso angle, even when he dips, his torso has remained slightly leaning to the side, that hip out, loading that left leg slightly more than the right leg, and keeping that dumbbell directly in that center line. Because you imagine that he's basically, imagine you've got this line for the middle of your body. As he's racked that dumbbell, he's moved himself and twisted and contorted his hips a little bit so that that dumbbell goes into that center line. And imagine it's like a big fucking load of power just boom, goes off through that position, and he can feel all the strength he's got in that position. So when he's dipping, notice he dips slow, because his goal is dip whilst maintaining that dumbbell in that line of power. And then once he hits the depth of his dip that he needs, he knows it's time to explode upwards, and he's going to be able to put so much power into that dumbbell. Look, it just flies overhead easy, which is pretty awesome. Now he's on to this 300 pounds 136 dumbbell, same clean technique in rack, and this rack doesn't look very good if I'm being straight with you. If we draw a line down now when he stood up straight in rack position, that middle of the dumbbell is all the way through his right leg. The dumbbell looks slightly different though as well. It's kind of on the side of his head, this dumbbell's a different shape, more of a seer dumbbell, isn't it? This is a little bit different rack position. Let's see if he tries to adjust this, because this is not a great rack at the moment. Oh, I missed it. Yeah, that was not very good, to be fair. Well, I say not very good. It's very good. I meant for him, his execution. Let's go back to that. Look what happens there, guys. He's in rack, and let's go real slow. Let's move it slow. So he's dipping, and because that dumbbell is through his right leg, the load's through his right leg, it's not in the center, he starts to move to the side, doesn't he, as he dips? Really far to the side, really obvious. Whoa. So he overcompensates. So now his dip isn't vertical. You know that line of power that I said? He was out of that line of power. So as he's dipping, he's been moving to get into it. But then because he's moved his body, it means that as he extends upwards, that dumbbell goes not vertical and it goes in a different direction. And he actually missed that one. Good little video there. You can see him make a mistake. Oh, he's going for it again. He's going for it again. So let's put this one back a little bit. Let's pause that rack. Right, so now if we pause this new rack, he's leaning a little bit more. He's made the adjustment. He's felt the position. He's made the adjustment. That's good. So now that dumbbell, if we draw a line down again, it's in the middle again. So this dip should be a little bit more vertical and straight. And it still goes to the side a bit, doesn't it? If we pause at the bottom of his dip now, though, and we draw a line from the hand, it is bang on in the middle. So now, if this was his power position, he was kind of there, and then he's adjusted a little bit this time. So he's not quite got it perfect, but he's made big adjustments from that first rep. And then this one goes overhead pretty well. So now this is a 145 key bad boy. Okay, now look at this. Loads of adjustments here. So that rack position looks loads better now. He's actually looking in the direction of the dumbbell this time as well, which is a really good cue I like to give peeps. As he dips, oh, this is low. So he's dipped slower. He's dipped perfectly straight now. He's well within that line of power. I'm assuming he bosses this. But yeah, great rep. So yeah, this is really good for you guys to see, because if we go back to this first dumbbell that he missed and we analyze it, we can see his rack position's not the same. It's all through the right leg. It's on his right arm and right leg. He dips and he ends up moving to the left to try and get within that center of power. He gets a little bit out of position, far too loaded on the left leg, etc. Fails it. As a good athlete, he gets all that feedback, all that awareness. He goes in, he adjusts his rack position. He then dips a little better. He still moves though, and he's still moving a bit to the left leg, but he gets it. And then on the final heavy one, he's made all these corrections. He gets that vertical dip. Dumbbell center of mass has stayed within that line of power that he's got. Ooh, owns it. 100 key dumbbell for 11 reps. Jesus Christ, fair play. So this is when you know that you are really good at dumbbell, is when you're able to be a robot and go rep after rep after rep after rep after rep, and it lands in rack and dip, lands in rack and dip, and lands in rack and dip, and you've got it real dialed. So he's applying all the same principles to this rep set that he's going to apply to the max set. He's just so he's so well drilled that he's able to do it rep after rep after rep. And they're not perfect reps, guys. Each rep's slightly different. His position's slightly different, but because it's for reps, it doesn't matter. When he's going for max, he's going to take a bit more time, make sure everything's perfect, but he knows he can get away with, oh, my foot's not quite in the right place, or oh, my dip was a bit too short there. But it just shows good mastery of the dumbbell here, that he's acquiring 95% of the position every single time, even on 11 reps. So this is a 154 kilo dumbbell. This is a Sear style dumbbell again. I guess this is when maybe he was training for the Arnold. So yeah, take a look at this. He's in that rack, he's rotated that torso, he's loaded the center of mass of the dumbbell through his midline, and he's dipped, really slow dip, really deep and slow dip. They are two cues that work for two moments in your life. Dumbbell and something else we won't talk about. So you want to go deep and you want to go slow. Boom, big extension, gets under the dumbbell quite nice there as well. He jumps under it well. What a class dumbbell, what a class athlete. I would say the biggest cues you can take away from his dumbbell, in the rack position, learn to put the center of the mass of the dumbbell through your midline, so between your feet. He does stand very narrow, and I will say that obviously it works for him, but for most people, you're limiting the depth of your dip through the narrow stance. He's got very mobile ankles, he's got a lot of forward knee travel, and he's generating a shit ton of force, so it's absolutely sweet. key. If you are not blessed with the ankle mobility to be able to do that, or maybe you just can't generate as much force in that position, don't be shy of taking your stance slightly different. Stand wider, stand longer, step forward a little bit. There are loads of little cues. I've actually built myself 2 dumbbell techniques. One for max that takes a little longer to acquire the position but's crazy powerful, and one that's a little bit more fluid and fast. So I would suggest doing the same for yourselves, and kind of like he was doing when he was repping, have a technique that you can get into a good flow with, it'd be robotic, and repeat and repeat and repeat, and then have a technique that maybe takes a couple of seconds longer, but it's going to put you in the most efficient position to generate force. Key takeaway from the dumbbell is make sure center mass of dumbbell straight down your midline. When you dip, it's slow and you're keeping the dumbbell in the same place, and that way you're not going to send the dumbbell to the left or to the right or behind you or anything. Looking in the direction of the dumbbell is a great cue. So when you're in rack position, because what he was doing as well, if you notice, is by twisting this torso this way, it helps get that dumbbell a little bit further towards that midline I was talking about. So instead of looking forwards and doing it, it often feels a lot better to look in the direction of the dumbbell. It'll help you twist that torso and kick that hip out a little more to get that dumbbell to be from here, because we twist and kick and it gets it that way. So we're twisting and kicking, and then it is more in midline. And that cue is a real big game changer, because once you find that position, the dumbbell will feel weightless in rack position. It'll feel like you've just slotted it. That's why I like to use that analogy of like, there's this power line, and if you're like slightly out of it, when you twist your torso and kick your hip, if the dumbbell moves into it and you land in that line of power, straight away you're going to go, right, now I understand how people do such big dumbbells, because as soon as you acquire the position, it's real powerful. Anyway, hope it helped. Hope it gives you some technique takeaways. Want more strongman content? Make sure you subscribe and like the video or comment. Comment some random bullshit comment in a bit.